Hey guys, welcome back to Jody Hughes Music, and in today's lesson we're going to talk about oblique motion. It's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. Some of you wanted some ideas that I have taken from, say, classical music throughout the years, and you have to kind of excuse me, I'm a little under the weather, but I want to get this video out. But anyways, so today we're going to talk about oblique motion. It's a very useful kind of technique that I employ all throughout my own music and creating licks and things like that, and it creates a lot of just pull and tension in the music sometimes, and it's really great for that. And it also can kind of present a wandering type feeling too if you let it kind of just go on and on. So let's talk about what oblique motion is. So you can imagine if I had a note, and this is going to be kind of straight out of something I have found in Bach a lot. Let's say I'm going to be hitting the 7th fret of the 3rd string there, and basically what I'm going to do is that's going to be the repeating note. So oblique motion is this idea where you have two lines at once, and you're going to have one line that's very constant and static and doesn't move, and then this other line is going to move around. And I'll play through it first so you get the idea. So you heard this, it's almost like a drone, if you will. So what was happening there was I was just in the G chord, and I was just pivoting off. That's kind of my static or constant kind of note. I was hitting the 9th fret of the 1st string and then bouncing back to the 3rd string. And what I'm doing is I'm just walking up the scale. B, C, D, and then I'm going to go back to the 7th fret of the 1st string, which is an A. And I could even go to the G here on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. So if I start from the G and just walk entirely up the scale, I could have. I'll do this faster. Kind of conjures up images of Bach for me on that time period. So there I was going from the F sharp. Actually, I walked down from the G on the 8th fret of the 2nd string to the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and I'm just. And by the way, you can even do this. You can just pick. I was kind of moving around a lot, but sometimes people just pick two notes and they use it as an effect. And this is assuming static harmony, like just a G chord, but you could of course move the idea around throughout another chord. So like if I was going to go to a C chord, let's say. Now maybe go here for the C. Almost sounds like A minor, but it's a C. You get the idea, hopefully, is that this line is staying the same. And you'll hear people do stuff like this. C chord. D. It's used in rock music, classical music, all sorts of music. I'm going to give you something a little bit more challenging, so it's not just constantly the same note over and over. But I will say probably, one of the reasons that this evolved a lot, if you can think about a cello or a violin or something, it's not like a piano where they have two hands and they cannot, always spell out the harmony with single note lines. So one of the reasons I think that this evolved is so you can hear, harmony underneath. If you just hear, it's kind of boring, but if you hear, as one of my teachers would say, it's a second layer. So you're now, instead of it being a one-dimensional force of just, it's two layers. And with a guitar or even the banjo, or think of a mandolin, a cross picking, you just get a much more fuller sound. So I think it evolved a lot in, say, a solo violin or a solo cello piece, because it's more resonant. It's two-dimensional as opposed to just one-dimensional. So those are things, and man, you can do so much with this. You can come up with a melody, like, let's say your melody is just like, so now instead of it being, and just by adding that one other constant drone under there, you get a sound. Or you could even use the fifth string of your banjo. You could even think of it like this. Now hopefully, as the song progresses, or your improvisation progresses, it becomes a little bit more interesting. You can only, that's the thing, and I can't put it into words for you, it's up for you to decide and taste, is this staticness can't just go on perpetual. It does eventually have to change. So, after so many times of that constant D underneath, you're probably going to have to move somewhere. That's why I move. Those are just me kind of just making up some things where I have a constant note underneath it. Now, another thing that I sometimes use this, and certainly you find it in Bach, is he goes one step further. Like, what if you don't want just one note to be like that drone or reoccurring kind of underlying layer, let's say, so to speak. Like an easy one is if I'm on the 8th fret of the 2nd string and I go down to the 7th. So just 8 and 7. And now I make that my reoccurring, and it's going to keep coming back. All right, so here it goes. So you notice, and I don't know how to put it into words, but it does certainly conjure up an image, if you will, of this kind of just flowing. Versus, once again, and the number of times you do this sort of thing, it can change around. So like I can move it up, I can move it down, maybe go to a different note. And, basically what you're going to do is you're going to have a melody and then underneath another layer. Now let's move somewhere else randomly, and I'm just going to randomly pick 2 notes underneath. 12 and 10 now. Depends on the effect you're going for. If you really want to get out there in more dissonance. That reoccurring thing, though, another word I would use is coherency. I've used that word a lot. But, this is like a little underlying coherent theme underneath it, and you can get outside of it. As long as that's there, your ear hears a pattern, and it's hearing something that it can remember. And notice, too, that it's a very short fragment. It's not like you're playing. They do that as well, but these are shorter kind of static things. So the main idea with oblique motion is you have a very static, constant kind of sound underneath. You can also have a sound on top. The oblique motion could be in the top line. So if I have, this, let's say I want the B to be the static motion, and I just put some notes underneath. And you can hear that effect. It's very nice and ringing. right? Maybe you combine them. Maybe sometimes you bounce back and forth between them. That's a lick that I do a lot, actually. What I'll do, and a lot of times I'm not even thinking key or chords. I'm just thinking like a pattern, if you will, with my fingers. And in some ways, that's kind of like parallel motion, even though the line's kind of staying the same, all of it. I'll build up tension like that, like if I'm playing a long solo and I want it to kind of reach a climax, let's say, that repetition is very nice because you have this. Maybe a descending scale to get you out of it, I don't know. Depends on the context of the solo and what you're trying to do here. But hope you can kind of get the idea, which is you have a line underneath that stays the same, and then something moving on top, or you can put the oblique motion on top. You can have something stay the same on top and have something changing underneath. And another way that one of my teachers would have put this is you have something that's very passive and something that's very active, but you don't have two things active at once. So this is like the passive part up here that's staying the same. It's just so much more interesting than just. And once again, I think this came about because of a lot of it, of course they probably worked this out on the keyboard as well, but it's very useful, I think, for solo instruments that don't have like the biggest, hugest sound in the world. You just get a lot more resonance, so you have two layers, and it's a two-dimensional thing. So that's kind of some knowledge about oblique motion. I'll give you some more insights about some of the other types of motions. Oblique motion is not the only type of motion that you can do. There's contrary motion, there's parallel motion. Parallel motion is the easiest one to understand because you're literally just moving things all at once, It's very easy to do on a stringed instrument as far as I'm concerned. Contrary motion is much more difficult to be able to improvise with, so that's a whole nother topic that's more advanced. But hopefully you found this video useful. I'll give you some more kind of concepts that I have found through classical music, but I've already talked about octave displacement. So between octave displacement and oblique motion, I would say those are probably the two that I got a lot out of that I could apply to a variety of music. I could put it in bluegrass, I could put it in jazz, I could put it in all sorts of things. So with those two concepts, it's going to give you a lot to explore. I'm sorry I'm not giving you like exact things necessarily to play, but the idea is there, which is, explore. You've got to, number one, you've got to know your scales really well. Explore a static note and then putting notes underneath it. That's just me, same note on top and then various notes on the bottom. And use your ears. The easiest ones are the ones that are diatonic in the key, but at the same time I'm using chromaticism. People do ascending lines. Stuff like that, You hear this all throughout music. All right, so that's more than enough about oblique motion for today. Please hit that subscribe button if you have liked this video, and throw me a comment if you have questions. I would love to have you at my website, jodyhughesmusic.com. Take care.